It's 7:30 p.m. We are going to begin this Rutherford Board of Education regular meeting, April 26, 2021. At this time, we'll ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Kelly, if you could please take roll.
Steve, can you record?
I'm recording.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Here.
Mr. Bogosian,
Here.
Mr. Conti,
Here.
Mr. Healy,
Here.
Mrs. Jones,
Present.
Mr. Mazzone,
Here.
Dr. Racine,
Here.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Here.
Dr. Oladi.
Here.
You have a quorum.
The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meeting of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Rutherford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place posted on the bulletin board outside the Borough Clerk's office, mailed to the Herald, South Bergenite, and the Record newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk. Hard copies of the agenda are available in the meeting room, and the agenda is posted electronically on Friday before the meeting date on the district's website at www.rutherfordschools.org. This regular meeting of the Rutherford Board of Education will be held as scheduled in the cafeteria at Rutherford High School. In accordance with the various governor's executive orders limiting participation in indoor gatherings, this meeting will also be conducted utilizing video conferencing as allowed by the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6, as amended by PL 2020-C11. As only a limited number of members of the public will be able to attend the meeting in person, members of the public are encouraged to participate by logging on to the following website at 7:30 p.m. as listed on the agenda. All members of the public participating remotely will be muted throughout the meeting, although opportunities for public comment will be made available to those participating remotely, as well as to those attending the meeting in person during the public comment portions of the meeting, at which times they will be unmuted. A video recording of the video conference meeting will be made available on the district's website, www.rutherfordschools.org, subsequent to the meeting. The video link can be found by opening the Board of Education link and clicking on Public Meetings and then Videos. So board members, in your packets, you have a couple sets of minutes, one set of minutes to approve. It's the regular meeting minutes for April 5th, 2021. Are there any comments or questions about those? Hearing none, we'll ask that they be entered for the record. So we are going to begin with a special presentation. We have the public hearing for the 2021-2022 budget. So we're going to open it up to Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I've left you each a copy of the presentation. This will be very quick because I think the key is the next slide here. You approved the budget at the March 15th meeting for submission to the county office for review, which I did on March 22nd, which was the deadline. On April 12th, we received approval from the county office of the budget. They did not ask for any changes. I didn't make any changes. So this past Thursday on the 22nd, the budget was advertised in the record as is required. And tonight is the public hearing and final board approval, hopefully. As I said in that middle point, nothing's changed since the last time we talked about this, so there's no surprises hidden in here. Just go over some of the highlights. Again, this is our base, $43,340,000. That was our base for this year, 2020-21. We had the 2% cap. We were not eligible for any allowable adjustments, which brings our tax levy up to $44,207,000, and that does, obviously, that represents about a 2% increase. The rateable base here in town is pretty consistent year after year, so that doesn't have a major impact. History of state aid, the exact same slide I showed you last time. You see the orange bars are the local tax levy. Year after year, it's a fairly consistent upward stride, and then from a financial standpoint, that's good to have consistency and increasing, and a consistent increase. The blue bars at the bottom are the state aid, and you see that's fairly consistent too, just not increasing. So that is, the state's contribution to our budget year after year for the last 20 years. And the gray bar, the gray line in the middle is the percent of our total budget, of the percent of state aid of our total budget. So you see it was up to about 10% 20 years ago. Now we're down below 6%. At one point it was at 4%. That would have been about 12 years ago. So, but it's been pretty consistent at that 6% level for the last 10 years. So that's where we stand right now. We did get a bit of an increase this year, but not as much as other districts did, as you've seen and as we've discussed. Personnel, what's in the budget? Same thing that were in the budget the last time we talked. Additional guidance counselor, 2 full-time equivalent teachers, Lincoln, Washington, and that will take up those 2 brand new classrooms at Lincoln. We're going to add a full-time special ed teacher at Pierpont. We're going to bump up a couple part-time positions right now, going up about a quarter of an FTE for a PE teacher at the kindergarten center, and a .16 full-time equivalent RTI teacher at Washington. In addition, we continue to look at our need for teacher assistants, and that fluctuates throughout the years. It always does. So we're covered in the budget for the way the situation looks right now, and as well as a couple more if we need them. Other initiatives, building improvements. The budget includes roof replacements at the K Center and the high school pool. Plan for boiler renovations. Just really, I got my indents wrong here, but anyway, Lincoln and Washington, those are fees for the architects to plan for boiler renovations of both those schools. They are coming due, so we'll look to get those done in next year's budget, but this is just the planning for it. A couple replacement vehicles. These pickup truck and a courier van, these have been in service for 15 to 20 years, so they're on borrowed time right now. We're also looking to do panic bars at the 100 gym here at the high school. Those are actually part of the security grant, which was approved. It hasn't been approved, but that was a program that is still subject to appropriation by the Assembly. So we'll see how that goes. But that is expected to be passed. We also have included funds in here for the lacrosse programs, boys and girls. Cost per pupil, this is the same slide. I didn't give you all the other slides we saw last time, but these are a comparative basis, Rutherford to other like districts in Bergen County. These are the same district factor group. They are K-12 districts, and you see we spend about 50% less, TNEC spends about 50% more than we do per pupil. These are comparable costs, so it doesn't take into consideration any costs that they may have that we don't. This includes all the costs that typically are needed to run a school district. So TNEC is spending about 50% more than we are. This has historically been the case. I don't know if there's anything we can ever do about this, but we are making do with less. And as you know, we have very good programs here. We're also spending less per pupil than the average of all these districts. Obviously, that goes without saying, but also less than the average for the entire state. So the average school district in the state. And that was really it. So any questions, you know where to find me. Any questions right now, Mrs. Jones?
The bar that's missing, what was there? What district was there? Evidently, somewhere there was a district next to us that's no longer there?
No, that's just a space.
It's just a space, okay. What is our cost per pupil?
So what
You
is
know,
our
our-
cost? It's about $14,000 per year
Okay.
for these costs.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Just a comment, just looking at the number of projects that we're doing, limited number, I should say, and the limited number of personnel, would it be fair to say we're still running a maintenance budget?
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, very fair to say. You know, the change in personnel, first of all, I think it's wonderful that we are where we are with spending, and we have added staff and we have added programs. I mean, every year, in the 7 years I've been here now, you know, I can't think of a year that we haven't added a program of some kind. And a program is also adding staff, sometimes significant staff when you do a special ed program, right, with teacher assistants and behaviorists and the like, and supplies. And, you know, so we managed, I give a lot of credit to Mr. Kelly and his office, and to the administrators and the supervisors and the directors who all work together, and, you know, to make sure that we can have our priorities straight where the spending should go. So I'm pleased. I'm pleased with that. But, you know, as we're all aware, right, the change in education, everybody looks at the technology change in education, and that's real and that's expensive. But I think there's also been with the technology, there's also been a real people change in education. You know, you never saw 2 teachers in a classroom 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Now it's rare not to see another teacher or a teacher assistant, right? We do much more project-based learning and group learning. We have more special ed students with needs in classrooms. So, you know, and as we all know, in any budget, right, personnel really is the huge ticket. So, you know, I do applaud the board and the district and the community. And like I said, the people who put the budget together, because we've managed to do a very good job. And I'm not going to ever say that, you know, the amount of money that is allocated or the amount of money people have to put forward in their tax bill is not a lot of money. But when you compare and contrast other districts, you can see that we're doing a really good job with what we have.
Any other questions? All right, so Mr. Kelly, just want to say thank you to you and the Finance Committee for all of your hard work putting together this budget. It will be presented to be approved by the board under the Finance section of New Business. So with that, we do not have our student representative with us this evening, so hopefully he will be back for the May 10th board meeting. So we are going to move on to the report of the superintendent, where he will begin with the update to the New Jersey School Performance Report.
Right, thank you. The updates to the New Jersey School Performance Report are very, very few. They were released on April 7th. They were on our website. And the reason why I said they're very few is that we haven't, so much of the report is predicated on test scores from the state assessments. So all the test scores that we see in the report are from the 2018 and 19 school year, which we discussed back at the time when those scores were presented, and they are what they are, good and bad. You know, we addressed where we thought we had concerns 2 years ago. We addressed where we thought we had strengths 2 years ago. And, you know, the real purpose of the test, like I've always said, is not about how many students in grade 4 or grade 7 or grade 8, you know, are proficient or above standard. It's the progress of students as they move along. I think we're all still stuck in teachers, parents, community, board members, all still stuck on, you know, superintendents are still stuck on saying, oh, last year, you know, we had 35% of the 8th graders achieve above. And this year, we only have 23%. Well, you know, look at what those students did in 8th grade when they were in 7th grade. It's about growth or a lack thereof. So really, the test scores, I don't want to say they were irrelevant, but, you know, they're 2 years old. And we don't know where these students are now in terms of progress. We're working to find out, right? We have a whole set of, you know, the state came out with that Start Strong assessment for the fall. We're looking into things like IXL and Link It and teacher-made assessments to try to gauge. We had to submit to the state, based on our current assessments now, what our best guesstimate was of who was at standard, above standard, or below standard. And I thought the teachers and the supervisors did a really good job of providing that information that was due a couple of weeks ago. But again, in terms of the school performance report, I don't want to spend more time talking about scores that are 3 years old. And we're generally very good. I mean, there were a couple pockets that we had concerns about, and we addressed those. Some of the information that is current, and you could look at the full report. It's rather voluminous on the website. The demographic information, the graduation rates, which again, we did well. We met our goal for the 4-year rate. We exceeded our goal. We exceeded the state for the 5-year rate, so that was a 96.3 for the 4-year, 95.9 for 5-year, and we missed by a tenth what our goal was for the 5-year. I remind you every time I give this report that the graduation rate is based on a cohort that enters the building 4 years previously. So it's not based on the number of students who start, in the up until about 5 or 6 years ago, the old days, the graduation rate was the number of students who were seniors on September 1st, how many graduate on June whatever. And most years you might have 1 or 2 students who don't graduate, so you have a 98 or 99%. The new rate takes account of how many students were freshmen 4 years previously, how many of that group graduate 4 years later. So if a student slips and falls behind because of attendance or because of academics along the way, your rate's a little lower. So that's why sometimes it is confusing to the public when we say, 198 of 199 seniors walked in graduation, but our graduation rate was 95%. But that's the difference. The 5-year rate, to have 95.9%, that means kids who may have fallen behind 1 year have graduated, but it also means your special ed students who are in a 18 to 21 program, who you're serving by not graduating them after 4 years, count against you in this score because they haven't graduated within 4 or 5 years. So when you wonder why sometimes the 5-year may be a little lower than the 4-year, keep in mind that because we're doing a good thing for those students. Our college and career readiness, which is also on the summary page, is also something I think the district could be very proud of. And this is, again, based on, see what I just did? I thought I was licking my finger with my hands. With A&P courses, we're at 45%, almost 46 of our students in an AP class, which is very high. And remember, we score very high. We've gotten awards for how we're scoring. The fear was the more students who take AP, the scores may come down. Well, the opposite happened. I think when you challenge students more, they rise to the challenge. And statewide, it's 35%. In dual enrollment, so many schools, they make such a big deal in the media about the dual enrollment program. We're at 76% of our 11th and 12th graders enrolled either through middle college at FDU or the program at Burn Community College to get college credit in courses they're taking here. And the state figure is like at 20%. We are low on the industry value because we don't run vocational programs in the school. And our college enrollment is close, 87.3 compared to 76 in the state. So, that information is all up there, but I did want to caution you not to get hung up on some of it because it's 2-3 years old. I would think even next year, we'll see whether there'll be spring testing or not. Because the test in the fall will be reported. I have to come 60 days after the test scores come in. That's the code, and report. But they're not, even though I have to report them, they're not really being used for program evaluations, more to see where students are. Okay, I'm going to move on to other things unless anybody has a question or about that. Okay. As you know, this year we used all of our snow days. So in the calendar, May 28th, which is the Friday before Memorial Day, is no school if we didn't use our days. We did use our days. I'm going to just inform the board, though I'd like to do, and hopefully we don't need to revise the calendar because it says we're in session if we used our days, but to run a one-session day that day. That's what we've done in the past, so that, and I don't mean one session the way we're running in the hybrid. I mean the traditional, day before Thanksgiving, day before the holiday break, where everything's done somewhere between 12 and 12:40, and we can start the weekend. I think that's fair, especially after the kind of year that everybody's had. So without any objections, we'll go with that.
That's fine.
Okay?
Yep.
Facilities, we continue to make a lot of progress, and we're also starting to make some progress on the website, the One Rutherford page. We are starting to do an overhaul, getting rid of some of the stuff from the referendum, putting some of it into an historical perspective, and getting more updates on what's happening now and more pictures. If you go and look at it, you'll see there's been some changes. There's still more to be made. I know you're going to see that picture still of the rendering from the first referendum of Mortimer Avenue. I told them today to switch that out with what they put in the mailer that went home, the newsletter. So they'll be working on that. So it's still kind of a work in progress, but we're making the work live. So hopefully the next week or two we'll be adding more stuff. The kindergarten is almost at a substantial completion. The elevator is operational. The lobby for the elevator is pretty much finished. Most of the rooms are done. Most of the outside work is done. I think we still have to do some work on that wall in the back, right? And, some of the things, the nurse's office, if you remember the quagmire of wiring, that presented a real challenge because of different codes where you can't have a cabinet too close to a door. You can't have, so we had to move some of the wiring and things like that. So that's going to be coming in, I think, May 10th or May 11th, something like that. So it's not 100% done yet, but it's getting very close. And Building and Grounds, we're meeting on Monday night, and then I'll have some dates for the committee about that tour we talked about. I'm going to reach out and see a couple of dates. Now, they'll probably be during the daytime hours. We could do it early in the morning or later in the afternoon, but I want to make sure our EPIC people are here to guide us through. So I'll check with our project manager to see give me 3 or 4 dates and times that might work. And then when we meet Monday night, I can present that, and we'll see what works for the committee. Okay?
Monday night, not the 10th, or yes, the 10th?
Monday night, the 3rd, we have a committee meeting.
Okay.
Right.
The 3rd, okay.
So we can decide that night which date, if any of them work for everybody, and we'll go from there. I'm going to bring up Mr. Sprayberry's favorite word, screens. We've talked about, what's the best way to get a handle on things, and one of the ways to get a handle is what we talked about, right? Getting the screen up on the the horizontal screen over the gym locker room windows that we think have a purpose and function, and, we can see what it looks like. But we decided to go a little bit beyond that and do a 10-foot kind of mock-up, which will have some of the glass color choices that we talked about, blue and gray, and we'll have a couple of, screens on it, and we're going to put it up on the wall down by the facade by the nurse's office, like a 10-foot area, and leave it up for a little bit, and we'll be able to take a look at it and kind of look at the colors and look at the screens. Now, again, it won't be a perfect facsimile, right, because it's going to be a small 10-foot attached to the wall, but it will give us a chance to see some of it, sooner than later. That's probably going to happen sometime, what do you think, Mr. Kelly, summer? It's a couple of weeks out. They have to design it, make it. And there is a bit of a cost factor to it, but I thought it was a good thing to do, to see it. And even from, as we're picking out colors, right? You've all done this on a bigger scale or smaller scale in your home. You see what a color, and then when you see it on the wall, it looks a little different than the sample look. So even seeing some of these preliminary choices of blue and gray that we've gone with to be thinking about, to see a couple of the samples up on the wall, I think would be a good thing. Okay? Anything on that before I move on? Mr. Kelly, anything you want to add that I didn't add? Or are we good? No? ESSER grant money, we had a 2-hour meeting right before the spring break with all the administrators and supervisors to talk about data that they've done and work that they've done on where they think some of this grant money can come in and help us with academic programs, social emotional programs, facility stuff, for lack of a better word. We've created a Google Doc that is being shared among that group now, so they can come back with concrete ideas and quotes and prices of things that they think might utilize the grant money well. Mr. Kelly then has put together a committee of a few of the supervisors and administrators to take a look at the data, what comes in from the committee, take a look at the funds that are there, and then make recommendations of where to go forward with the money, okay? We talked about the grant. It's $600,000 and change with a couple of other sections for academic enrichment and mental health that bring it up, into the mid to high 700,000s. And there's all sorts of guidelines of how you have to spend it, but it's, but we've come up with a lot of good preliminary ideas. And we're going to tie some of the programs that make the cut, for lack of a better word, for the academic and social emotional into our professional development day on June 1st. So these new programs that we're looking to bring in or different things we're looking to do with students, the faculty would be working on that. And we'll also have the ability to bring in some trainers if needed, depending on what program we get, because part of the funding can go for that, for professional development. So we're putting a lot of energy and thought into making some intelligent decisions on what to do with the money. And we're also being told that there's going to be an ESSER 3 coming up in the summer. And there could be a fair amount of funds coming with that one as well. So we're also keeping that in mind as we're looking at this funding to see what are some of the more immediate things that may help. Because if more funds come in, and we're being given every assurance that they're coming, we can then take a look maybe at some longer range things. Okay? Any thoughts, comments on that? The academic decathlon will be competing virtually in the Nationals on April 30th, which is this Friday. I also want to mention that our Family Consumer Career Leaders Association, FCCLA, which every year we've gone off to state, and we always had a couple of students go off to the Nationals. And once again this year, and that covers what used to be called home economics, but it's a lot broader than that now, in terms of, we have several students who qualified on the state level to participate in the National, and that will be virtual as well, and that's going to be done at the end of June. And it's Brenna Phillip for sports nutrition information. An informational video on nutrition, I believe, that came from Kira Yablonsky, Maya Forte, and Hannah Kane. And then also a website, developing a chapter website competition, Alyssa Castillo. So those students have all moved on to the Nationals. And the advisor, Mrs. Howard, one of the co-advisors, Ms. Howard's been she's our textile teacher and been advisor for a long, long time at the club. She was selected as the National Advisor honoree this year, which is a nice distinction and honor for her. So we congratulate those students and we congratulate Ms. Howard. We're very happy that the Bergen County Board of Health has changed their outlook and policy. I think, I don't want to jinx anything, but, I think with the new policy, with the number of vaccines, that, I don't think we're going to see any of the issues that we had for the first 3 quarters of the school year in terms of large quarantining or closures. So that's good news, and I appreciate everything the board did, the community did, and the boards and the communities in the 35 other towns where most, if not all, were equally active in knocking on doors to try to get people to do the right thing. And it was to do the right thing for the students. I think that's what it ultimately came down to. We weren't looking to put students or faculty and staff in harm's way. That was the last thing. But, doing the right thing for the students. And I'm pleased that that change came last Friday. Yes.
Were there a lot of other boards that adopted the resolution?
I'm sorry.
You're talking to...
I don't know how many boards adopted a resolution. I know that just about all, I should say a large number of communities, the superintendents were vocal. I know several boards that did. I also know that in some towns, mayors and councils got involved. There's different dynamics in every town too. I mean, we have a Board of Health in town that we work with directly, and then they have to speak to the county. Some towns don't have that, and they go directly to the county. So, you know, every community had a different chain of command, more or less, to go through. But again, I'm pleased that they finally came around with consistency, right? The governor today came out with some announcements that do have an impact on schools. He has, in case you didn't see it, beginning May 10th, indoor gatherings of almost every kind can be raised to either 50% of the room's capacity with a maximum of 250. Outdoor gatherings of just about any kind, including graduations, can be raised to 500 as of May 10th. He did provide the caveat that he expects to see a larger increase by Memorial Day, okay, of that number, if everything goes in the direction they're going. He also said that if you run a prom, either indoor or outdoor, you can dance, provided that you dance with a mask on. And I always like to dance with a mask on so people don't know it's me. Yeah. And also, like, you know, if those of us, if we were talking about the sugar cube with the vaccines, right? If you remember when you had to make sure there was distance when you were dancing, well, there has to be distance now when you're dancing.
If you went to Catholic
So right, the nun I had in 7th grade is very happy, right? Right? So those things, you know, we did have an outdoor prom planned and scheduled, so that's good news. Because we won't go inside. We know the venues aren't there, but we were worried that we wouldn't be able to even have the number outdoor. If graduation stays at 500, that's the number we had last year. It's a very easy increase, right? I mean, you just have to print more tickets. We usually print about 1,200 tickets for the graduation. So if we print 1,200 tickets and they raise the number to 700 or 800, whatever the case may be, we'll be ready. But at least we're no worse off than we were last year for the students and the parents, and hopefully we'll be a little better. And then other things, you know, perhaps moving the high school play indoors to the, you know, the thing was going to be done at Lincoln Park, maybe in the auditorium, maybe some other activities. You know, this just happened today at 2 o'clock. So, you know, we'll wait a little bit and we'll work through some of the end of the year stuff to see what we might change because of this change and what we won't change, you know, because you keep in mind, everything is involved in planning, too. None of these things just happen, you know, like that. But, again, a good sign that we're moving in the right direction. And that said, I want to bring up what our policy is that we adopted in August, I think, or maybe July, on remote public board meetings, okay? And the policy, first of all, is only valid that you could do this Zooming if you're in the state of a public declared emergency. Now, the governor hasn't lifted that yet, right? But I think, you know, we're heading again in that direction. However, the board policy says the board may hold a remote public meeting to conduct public business during a declared emergency if the emergency reasonably prevents the board from safely conducting public business at a physical location with members of the public present. Goes on to say, the declared emergency must necessitate capacity restrictions, reducing the number of individuals that can be present in a meeting room at an amount below that reasonably expected for the public meeting by the board. Okay? So, I think according to the sign in the back, it says we could put 292 people in here. We divide that by half, because remember 250 is 50%, but 250 is the max. That gives us 146. We take away the 12, meaning the 11 of us and Mr. Met, and we're up to 134 potential participants coming into the meeting. So it's my thought, since this kicks in on May 10th, if we don't want to do it on May 10th, maybe going after that, we consider just doing the meetings live and in person. You know, the number of folks, I don't know how many people have logged in tonight. Nobody. We've been getting 2 or 3 people zooming in, and they're the 2 or 3 people that usually show up here. I believe that, you know, that little things matter, and as I said to you folks, and I applaud the board, because some boards refuse to do it. But back in August, when I recommended that we start holding our meetings in person, because how are we supposed to say to parents and students and teachers, right, come to school, but we can't sit in a room, right? Some boards just went their first public meeting last month, and what I suggested would happen happened in those communities where people were raising that question. So I think, setting the tone does matter, and I think as we're looking ahead to what's hopefully going to be, I use the word normal loosely because there's still going to be some things that will be different, but a relatively normal school year next year, I think it would be important to go forward in that direction. So you could think about it. I think May 10th, we should do what we've been doing since that's the first day of the change. But I would recommend that beginning with June, we invite folks who want to be here to come here like we've always done. And my last thing is just a reminder that Monday night we'll go by Zoom again for these committee meetings, but again, next year, or maybe in the summer, we usually pick one date in the summer if we need a committee meeting, we'll go back to in person. But we'll do personnel at 6:30, curriculum and instruction at 7, building and grounds at 7:30, finance at 8. I know that's tight windows. We're going to try to stick to the half an hour. We don't have super big agendas, but we have some important things to go over with each group. And then on Wednesday, strategic planning and communication will meet in person in the media center at 4:30 with the IT group. Okay? So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Questions from board members? Mr. Conti?
Do we, so is, in regards to the Zoom, the board meeting being a Zoom, once the state of emergency is lifted, we cannot do a Zoom at all. We cannot offer that as an option.
According to the way the policy is written and the way I think the law was written under the emergency, yes, that's correct.
My only comment toward it is, I don't know about how anybody else feels, but although there's not a lot of people logged on here tonight, I do feel that having the option for a Zoom for people makes it so much more accessible to the public. If someone could be still at work and they could log in and see what they want to see, if there was an issue that they wanted to see or something. So that would be my only comment is I understand that we're not allowed to, but maybe there's something to be said for, we still Zoom it, but we don't allow a public comment unless you're here in person, but at least to make it accessible to people. Well,
but on that note, if you can't make a public comment, I think that defeats the purpose of, part of opening a meeting to the public is so they can make a public comment.
Yeah.
And the recording of the video, which gets up usually within, it'd be a little longer because of Zoom, to tell you the truth, but without Zoom, it's, a day or two, it's up, provides everybody that opportunity too. I don't disagree with what you're saying. It makes life easier for folks, but it also creates other issues for the board, other concerns about who may or may not be able to come in to, we post the link publicly. It's not, anybody in the world can click in on that link. And we're not in the world because we block people outside the United States, but anybody in the United States can come in. So there, there's more work on the technical end with recording and so on. So I think, to your point, I'd have to get clarification on whether the option exists outside of the emergency. But the way our policy is right now, which we got from the law, it doesn't. But I could look into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like there were a couple instances in past board meetings where people were pretty interested, and we had a pretty significant attendance online. And I just felt like that was certainly more, just being more accessible. Right. I feel like this is something that it's a piece of technology that because of COVID, we would have never done it had it not been for COVID. And now it's something that has come along and it's actually been for the better. It's made us better, I think, as a board and as a district, personally. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. I think it's a point well taken, and obviously it's valid, right? It's more attractive, it's easier, for lack of a better word, for someone who's interested to log in from home or from the office and, get in their car or walk over. But I will tell you that, we don't draw a big audience in person or on Zoom, right? It maybe has something to do with the lights reflecting off my head. But, anytime we've had a topic of interest, like lacrosse,
Yep.
which I'm glad you were the one who questioned. I want to mention something about lacrosse too. About lacrosse, about the buses, about reorganization, about the pool, right? Referendum. We had, we probably were pushing that 134 person. So, and I think last year, the couple of board meetings that we really had Zoom attendance was last May when graduation was, we didn't know what we were going to do, what we were, seniors, and then in November when we were talking about changing to a full day, right? Those were our big ticket items, and I think those folks would have shown up here as well. So I'm not negating what you're saying. I don't disagree with it, but I do think it's the topic that draws. I always said that, I know the board has always said, I've always said, gee, it'd be nice to get more people here. I always see it, though, the other way of looking at it is the community and the parents are happy because when they're not, they're here,
That's right.
right? But I do want to mention about lacrosse, our high school lacrosse team. Now they're playing a sub-varsity schedule this year. They're starting as a JV schedule, which is the right way of doing it, right? But they got off their first 2 games and won both their games. So they're 2-0 right now in their first year, which is nice. Regardless of what your schedule is, that's nice and is a good start for them. And congratulations to the coach and the players.
I actually attended the game on Saturday. It was awesome. It was really well attended. Seeing the kids played really well, and everyone had a good time, and the score was pretty awesome, 14-5. So
no, and remember we had the conversation, and I don't know, Chris, Mr. Conti, if you were on the board seat or you were sitting in the audience then.
I was
but
the audience.
Remember I talked about you want to build a program the right way. And and this as a former coach talking, right? You don't want to throw kids in the deep end of the pool. You want to bring them in when there's enough students there for the team, and start at the level of competition where they could build confidence and want to stay involved and not want to throw it aside, right? So I know there's only 2 games in, but they're off to a great start.
Was it at Memorial Field?
Yeah, it was down at Memorial, and there was a significant amount of kids from the 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, as well as the 6th and 7th grade and the 7th and 8th grade team there. So it was neat for all these kids who are really young to see these high school players
That's
playing.
great.
So
That's great.
yeah.
Yeah, and I did look at I did watch some of it. There was not full game, I don't think, was on, but I think
Just some of it, yeah.
there were Instagrams, there were
Yep.
some, and I watched some of it, and not only was it good play, spirited play, but there was a nice crowd.
Yeah, it's great.
Would they play on Saturdays at Memorial Field?
They did play this
Or they
Saturday, but the
travel?
schedule varies like any of the other sports.
Oh.
They're online, but,
Oh,
okay? All right?
Dr. Racine, you had a
Was it
comment?
today? Yeah, back to Zoom. Once we get more clarity on what's possible and not possible, right, we discussed this at a planning committee meeting? I think it's a good place to talk
Yeah.
about that, yeah.
Well, we're
Monday.
probably going to have 2 scheduled.
Great, great.
We have the one coming up
Before,
next
yeah.
week, and then we'll have one after that for a follow-up on that topic, but also for other topics that we need to talk about. So, yeah, we can bring it up.
Okay.
I'll tell you, though, that, and again, this is anecdotal, I didn't talk to, but I spoke to a superintendent in another town who called me about 2 weeks ago, asking me, do we have live board meetings? Do we do live board meetings with a Zoom or some kind of platform, right? Or do we strictly do, and he was, platform Zoom. And his goal was he was doing live with Zoom like we're doing, and he wanted to move just to live. And he went through the list of about 20 schools, and a great number of them already switched to just live even before this came out. Again, that's not a reason to do it. But I'm just saying,
The pros and cons of both.
right. So I'll see what I can find out before we meet again.
Great.
Okay? And if we find out we can do it, again, it doesn't mean we have to. It just knows that we can. We can then discuss it, right?
Other comments, questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you, Mr. Hurley, for that robust report. We're going to move on to the report of the president, so I'm not going to repeat anything that you've said. So just to add to it, I want to thank you, as usual, for meeting the hat trick of three goals that you've been charged with all year: the COVID, referendum, and everything else. I will say my kids don't always give me a lot of information, but my daughter did come home today telling me she's allowed to dance during prom. So I was made aware from her. I think, and my in-laws are waiting to see if the graduation numbers increase for high school graduation. So I think the idea of meetings being in person versus on Zoom is a great point, Dr. Racine, to bring it to strategic planning and make a list of pros and cons, and really look at that and make some decisions, because it sounds like it's more of a board policy decision in the longer term. And an example of where, are there things we leverage for the future, in what ways or not. So that's great. It's a great point. I did want to remind everyone that I sent out the superintendent evaluation. And so I'd ask everyone to try to complete that by Friday, May 14th, if you can. That will give a couple weeks to write the report. I'd like to share it with my colleague, Vice President, Mr. Mazzone, and then we'll send it out to everyone to review before the June board meeting, ideally, and Mr. Hurley as well, so we can discuss it then. So if everyone could mark Friday, May 14th. Also, I guess this was a question for you that I forgot to ask, but in terms of the National Decathlon students, are we able to see that on Zoom?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Well, wishing...
Again, I can find out, and if you can, I'll send it.
Okay.
I'll send it to you if you can, but I don't think that's the case.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And good luck to them this Friday. Two other things. I know that we are a separate entity from the mayor and council, but we are, one town, and we go by one Rutherford. And so I wanted to acknowledge the health issues that Mayor Nunziata is having. And I know that our hearts and thoughts are with him and his family, and appreciate that we've talked about doing something to show our support to make life a little easier for the family. So I reached out to Perry, his wife, and they're doing well and they're in good spirits. I did spend a few minutes at the mayor and council meeting that was started at 6:30, and council president Goldsack was made the interim mayor, so I want to wish him luck and all that, and best wishes again to Mayor Nunziata on a successful surgery and successful recovery. I was encouraged by the CDC and New Jersey guidance today that is starting to come out. It seems like over the next 2 weeks there's going to be more guidance that's coming out that will signal what the last few weeks of school can look like, what graduation could look like, and also starts to signal what next year can look like, as I'm sure your team's getting together to make those plans. So we'll look forward as a board to hearing what those plans are, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And finally, just wanted to acknowledge this Saturday, May 1st, is Decision Day for Rutherford High School seniors, and want to congratulate all of our seniors who have these difficult decisions to make. It's been a tough year for them applying to college, and just wanted to say on a personal level, having a 12th grader who's been through the Rutherford schools now from kindergarten to 12, that I am super appreciative of everything that the district has offered my children, and seeing now that she's going to a school that she wanted to go to, and I know that her friends are all excited and making their choices, that the Rutherford schools really provides an extraordinary educational experience, and it's well-rounded, and I'm really proud that I made the decision to be in Rutherford, and proud to serve on the board and represent the district and the students. So just want to thank Mr. Hurley, the administration, and the faculty for all the great work that you do and the way in which you impact the students.
Thank you.
That's all for my report. Questions or comments?
Congratulations. She got
Thank
where
you.
she wants, so that's wonderful.
Yeah. It was a bit of a bloodbath, it felt like, this whole season
No.
for seniors
It
applying.
was hard.
Yeah.
I know some of the kids went away last week because it was off to see the schools that they hadn't been able to go to. And now they have to quarantine though, right? Because they went out of state, they have to quarantine, but it still helped them, so that's
Yep.
good. Tough year for them.
I did want to make one more comment. So Mr. Hurley made a comment saying that there were a bunch of Board of Eds that in the beginning of the year didn't want to go in person. And I just wanted to say I'm also proud to work with board members who not only said, agreed we should come in person, but some of you actually approached me before the September meeting saying we need to come in person. I think it's a real sign of a strong board, and we've had, I think, 100% attendance at almost every meeting in person. So I think it's great representation for the town. So.
Long before the vaccines.
Yep, long before the vaccine, exactly. So any other comments or questions before we move on? Ms. Ahmed?
Talking about having Zoom all the time, our church went over to be able to go to church, we Zoom. Well, now that we could go back to church, they don't want to come back to church. It's like 5 people in church, and you sit there and you look at all these squares up on the wall. And it gets I think we lose the motive to actually, want to communicate with people, to see their faces up close. And I could see if people stayed home and Zoom if they were sick or something, but now it's like a luxury to them, and there's no kind of closeness, things that we've had in, our town, like you could come and you could see his face and you could see his remark, So it's kind of sad if we just like Zoom and you don't have contact, I don't see you or whatever. So I'm like really hoping that we get out of the Zoom sooner or later and we're able to be more in contact with with the town. Also, one question one thing that Mr. Hurley said, being the personnel chair, but being a mother first, when your child, even when they graduate, if they have a question, they know a teacher, they contact them, and the teachers go out of their way to help them. So I'm so proud always of being, a board member in this town, because I've never seen anything I really didn't like. And I thank them for whoever hired them, that we've hired nice people, really.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmed. All right, so at 8:23 p.m., we are going to open the meeting to the public for any items related to the agenda. It looks like we have no one here in person, and our 2 online people are board members. Okay, unless our board members acting as no.
Mr. Conti likes Zoom so much he Zooms when he's here.
Yeah.
Okay, so are there any
Buy
comments
stock
for
first.
people on Zoom? Okay, hearing none, at 8:23 p.m., we're going to close this portion of the meeting to the public, and we're going to move on now to new business where there is action to be taken. We will start with personnel. Mrs. Ahmed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight we only have, it's a short one. We only have 7 motions to go over. One is Jessica Perrone, a long-term substitute physical education teacher, to approve her. 2, Bulldog Care Helping Hand. Tony Ann DeSalvo is a Bulldog Care Helping Hand. Oh boy, I'm having trouble tonight. Helping Hand for the 2021 school year. Amanda Taza, number 3, to approve an extension of her child rearing leave of absence. 4, Carissa Malone, to approve a leave of absence under the Family Leave Act. 5, Maria Mayo, approve her disability leave with pay. And 6, Megan Gordon, approve a disability leave with pay for Megan Gordon, special ed teacher at Washington School. It's a maternity leave. 7, travel reimbursements, to approve the following travel reimbursement for Amanda DeRosa, catching up on 2nd grade students who have fallen behind activity. And that's it for tonight. So with the board's approval, I'd like to move personnel 1 through 7.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Ahmed. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, do we have a second on the motion? Mr. Healy? Any last comments or questions? All right, Mr. Kelly, please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Mr. Bogosian?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Yes.
Dr. Oladi?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to curriculum and instruction. Mrs. Jones.
Thank you. We did not have a curriculum and instruction meeting, and there is one resolution on the agenda tonight, and that is for out-of-district placements.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Hearing none. Mrs. Jones, you want to move
I
that?
move the one resolution for out-of-district placements.
All right, we have a second. All right, Mr. Sprayberry, any last comments or questions? Hearing none. Mr. Kelly, please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Mr. Bogosian?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Yes.
Dr. Oladi?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to finance. Dr. Racine.
Okay, for finance, we have 6 items today on the agenda. Number 1 is the approval of bills. Number 2 is the March treasurer's report. Number 3 is the list of budget transfers. Number 4 is the approval of the 2021-2022 budget for a total of $54,654,000,000. Okay, 683, 436. I should read on right now.
That would be really great.
All right.
No audit there.
Okay. Number 5 is the amendment for our Delta Dental program. And number 6 is to retain Phoenix Advisors as our bond advisor.
All right, thank you, Dr. Racine. Any comments or questions? No, hearing none. Dr. Racine, you want to move this?
Yes, I'd like to move numbers 1 through 6.
All right, we have a second. All right, Mr. Mazzone, any last comments or questions? Hearing none. Mr. Kelly, please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Mr. Bogosian?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Yes.
Dr. Oladi?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to policy. Mr. Healy.
Yes, we did not have a committee meeting since our last board meeting. There are no resolutions for this year.
Okay, thank you. Then we will move on to buildings and grounds. Mr. Sprayberry.
Good evening. Yes, we have one motion to move. First off, I'd like to say great report on the updating of the construction. Thank you, Jack. Exciting to hear. So, heard a lot of chatter about people going around, so it was nice to see the union columns and stuff going up. It's just great to see the progress.
Thank you.
We've got one resolution with 3 change orders, 2 at Pierpont, 1 at Kindergarten. And Mr. Kelly, I'm assuming these are all still within budget, within everything we've discussed.
Yes, the Bismarck now, following these 2 change orders, will have an allowance of $131,000 remaining. And Brahma at the kindergarten center still has $14,000 remaining. But again, that walkway in the back will exceed that, but we know that's coming.
Understood? I'd like to move this motion to the board.
All right, any other comments or questions? We have a second on the motion. Ms. Jones, any last comments or questions? Hearing none. Mr. Kelly, please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Mr. Bogosian?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Yes.
Dr. Oladi?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we move on to old business. Mrs. Jones.
I did attend the Washington School PTA meeting. That was on April 12th. The officers were there. Mr. Bill McKay gave a good report about how pleased he was with everything going so well for the year. The sad news is there's no field day, which has always been a big event for the elementary school. They loved the window decorations. The popcorn fundraiser did very, very well. They're going to have a Mother's Day plant day, and that's coming up. And Teacher Appreciation Week is April 3rd. President Tracy Lay will be the president again next year. I gave them an overlook of the board, and they were thrilled to find out that U.S. News and World Report rated us New Jersey schools #1. So they like that.
Thank you. Mr. Healy?
Yes, I did attend a Kinder Center PTA meeting on April 8th. And we also have a competing plant sale.
I can't hear you. Can you speak in the
They
mic?
have a competing plant sale
Oh.
for Mother's Day. But they did report on their initiative and fundraisers, and of course it's West End, but they're doing very well. And they also, parents of PTA, are very complimentary and appreciative of the Kinder Center administration and staff.
All right, thank you. Other updates, Mr. Conti?
Yeah, I attended the Lincoln School PTA meeting. Just gave them an update, and they're a lot of the same things that fundraising. They were excited to hear about the resolution as far as trying to get the Bergen County Board of Health to adhere to the standards. And Dr. Valechko spoke a really heartfelt thank you for all the support that the PTA, the rest of the teachers, and a lot of the student body, parents, and have given her during this difficult time. So that's what's going on.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Other updates? Ms. Ahmed?
I believe you covered the high school.
I did. I covered the high school. First of all, that PTA is a powerhouse, and I think they're all stepping down at the end of this year. So they're looking for almost a new whole slate. But I have a feeling some folks moving up may get brought into the fold. But one thing that came up, it's what I was sort of sidelining to Ms. Hurley, was there was an ask from one of the parents about whether or not we would, the Board of Ed Scholastic Awards, that are presented to the different grade levels for their scholastic achievement. We typically have that meeting in the gym. I think in October, we didn't get to have that this year, so there was a question about how we might re-envision that at some point this year. So just ask Mr. Hurley to give an update.
Well, yeah, the seniors, the seniors get, October meeting is in the auditorium, we do the Board of Ed Awards, and any senior who's getting an award for their junior year, right, gets it, it's for the previous year, right, gets it in October. Then at graduation every year, any senior who earned it again for their senior year gets the appropriate designation at graduation rehearsal, and then the ones who get the 4 years, they all get recognized at graduation. They actually get the award at the rehearsal. They get their name called at graduation, but then the 4-year winners get their, used to be a trophy, now it's a plaque, at the graduation ceremony. So this year, the seniors will get their recognition at rehearsal and at graduation for either junior or senior year, or both. And then the 4-year winners will still be honored at the ceremony. And as far as the students returning, we're hoping that next year we can do a double award. We'll do the ones that we missed this October and the ones that we will give next October, and catch up that way with the kids. So most of the time the kids repeat, so it wouldn't increase the number of students by that many. But kids will get 2 pins instead of, right? Because they get bronze, silver, gold, and they get the award. So we'll do it like that. Okay? That makes sense?
I appreciate your follow-up on that. And at the end of the meeting, they have a spin the wheel raffle, and I claimed that if I won that, I was going to give it to Mrs. Ahmed, and I'm sad to report I did not win.
I win every time and I give it back. It's hysterical.
Right. Other updates? Dr. Racine?
Really minor, so at the kindergarten center, the instruction fences are down now because I go by it every day, and it looks really nice. Like, I was impressed. If I didn't know which was the new part of the building, I wouldn't be able to tell. And I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the building match because it's just well done. Even now you can walk around back and see both sides, and the whole new walkway is really nice.
Well, we're 2 for 2. We got Lincoln,
Yeah, Lincoln.
and we got the kindergarten center, so I'm 2 for 2. And remember, if I go 2 for 5, I'd be in the Hall of Fame if I was a baseball player.
Any other old business? All right, we're going to move on then to legislative update. Ms. Jones?
Thank you. I have two policies, a Senate Bill 311, not policies, bills, sorry. Senate Bill 311, which prohibits a school district from denying admittance to from a student due to tardiness or violation of dress code on the school uniform, if they have a school uniform policy. NJSBA supports the intent of this bill, but requested clarifying language to address the issue of discipline for the student if they fail to keep up with the dress code after this. So NJSBA will support this bill if it has the amendment in it, meaning the school can then discipline the child after, but they have to let them in, which is something that. And the other one is just two tonight, is an Assembly Bill 5524, which requires portable anti-choking devices to be placed in schools. If this bill is passed, at least one anti-choking device will be made available in the cafeterias and nurses' offices. Devices could be placed in a unlocked and easily acceptable location during the school day and kept available when the school is open and another activity taking place. The devices would have appropriate identifying sign. And policies for use of anti-choking devices by the school nurse and school employees and training in the airway management would be mandated. The Department of Education would reimburse public and non-public schools for the costs involved. That's it. Thank
All right,
you.
thank you. Any questions or comments about the update?
No
Ms.
more
Lemay?
Heimlich maneuver anymore when you're choking?
No, that's not gone.
That's gone?
No, it's not gone.
Oh, well, how
I
do
don't
you-
know.
You stick something down their throat
I
and push it
don't
down
know.
further? I don't know.
I don't know.
It sounds a little, sucks it out. It's very interesting.
There's a lot of bills out there.
All right, then, at 8:37 PM, we are going to open up the meeting to the public for any items related or not related to the agenda. Seeing as no one's in person, we'll go to Zoom. Anyone wanting to unmute yourself, please do so. All right, at 8:38 PM, we are going to close the meeting to the public. Looks like we have no need for an executive session. So we will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Mr. Bogosian, second Mr. Mazzone, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, thank you, we are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.